not be frustrated. We're going to start the class now. The topic is called When the Owner is with Him. And you will understand what I mean by this text in just one moment. I want you all to pay attention to the screen. The class is called When the Owner is with Him. The Torah says as follows, and chapter 22 of Exodus, Shemot, verse 13 and 14. If a person borrows something, an animal or an object, from another, and is injured or dies, if the owner of the item is not with the borrower, then the borrower must make restitution. Shalem yeshalem. However, im be'alavimo, if the owner was with the object, was he took the cow and was working with the cow, or took the object and was working with the object, the borrower does not have to make restitution, whether it's a borrower or a renter. The story is as follows. If one borrows an object or an animal from a person in his service, he's working for him, and he brings himself on the object or himself on the animal, the borrower does not have to pay for any damage or loss to the object, even if it is not done by the person himself, or even if it's not done when the person is around, so long as at the time of the loan, the lender, the owner of the article, is also in the service, is working for the borrower. In that case, the borrower does not have to pay for any damages. Normally, however, if a person borrows something, he is not only have to pay for the loss of theft, but he even has to pay for any accident that may occur, or even for things like a death of an animal, but was not caused by him. Nevertheless, he has to pay. So the same exception that he does not have to make restitution applies to any other guardian. Normally, other guardians do not have to pay in certain circumstances, but in other, yes. For example, the theft. If the owner, again, is with the borrower or with a guardian, then the guardian does not have to pay for any damage. This is the principle, or im be'alav imo. And the principle that has to be there is that the person who owns the animal has to be hired to work for the borrower at the same time as the loan of the object. If, however, the object is given first and the service is doing afterwards, then they will, according to the rabbis, this will not apply. We will see in a moment an interesting story about this. Let's take a look a little bit at the Mishnah. In the case of one who borrowed a cow and at the same time borrow the services of its owner with it, or he borrowed a cow and hired its owner with it, so whether it's borrowed, right, or when he did one first and one and afterwards, or vice versa, or he borrowed the services of the owner or hired him and afterwards borrowed the cow. In all such cases, when the cow dies, the borrower is exempt from liability. As the Torah says, because it says in the Torah, as we just read, im be'alav imo, if the owner is with him, he does not have to pay. So this is a very interesting law. A law which actually, as we will see in a moment, has raised some eyebrows among certain people. What is the logic of this? So maybe the way that the Rambam explains it in the simplest way is that since the person who owns the object is there, he should have taken responsibility for it. He's actually coming in. So the responsibility, he's given the object, but he's not given the responsibility. He's carried the object to the person as well. So because of that, we assume that he is actually, the borrower is not taking responsibility. The owner continues to have the responsibility. If it breaks, he does not get the restitution. Now, in order to understand this, we have to understand a very basic concept. There is a borrower and there is a lender. When a lender lends an object to the borrower, the object is owned in a way, subjugated to the borrower. The borrower has control over the item. So in a kind of loan situation, we have someone that dominates. Well, that dominates is a person who is actually the borrower, and the other person is obligated because the object is taken by the other person. He is the person who is obligated, whereas the borrower is actually free, has more leeway. He's borrowing the object, he's taking it to his possession. Now let's inside, I want to show you an interesting game that the Gemara points out as a way of playing with this concept. Remember that we said that the loan of the object and the hiring of the owner of the object have to be at the same time, but not if one person already took the loan of the object and then hires a person, then the exemption does not work. In order for the exemption to work, it has to be at the same exact time as the loan. If it's afterwards, it doesn't work. If a person is hired after the loan. So here is a little joke. Rava says, Amar Rava Haiman de Mishal Mide Bechavre Veliftar. If a person wants to play a game and borrow something from a neighbor, from a friend, and be exempt from liability, let him say to the lender at the time of borrowing, pour me water. Pour me water means you're working for me, even if it's not paid. He will thereby be exempt, because that will be a case of borrowing an item and borrowing or hiring the service of the owners with it. So when you do both, you give me water, that's service. Give me the object now is in the category of having the owner with him. If the lender, however, is smart, Pikeach, who, he will say to him, no, borrow the item first, and then I'll pour you water for you. As we said before, since the owner will not be yet working for the borrower at the time of the borrowing, the exemption does not apply. So you see here that there is a kind of an order for this exemption to occur. So again, in order for the exemption to happen, the loan of the object and the hiring of the owner of the object must be at the same time. Then in that case, if the borrower or somebody in the borrower company breaks that object or the object is lost, the borrower does not have to pay restitution. Even though if the owner was not there, he would have to pay for everything. Once the owner is there, he is exempt. Now again, when he said the owner is there, it doesn't mean that he is there physically. He could be away. But the fact that he is hired at the service with him, that is considered to be technically imbe alav imo. The owner is with him. Let's continue. We're going to now come to a very interesting story. And let me introduce it by explaining that in a teacher and student situation, the question is, who is the borrower and who is the lender? And this is the question we're going to be discussing here. So when Rabba was explaining to the students that if you have an object that your person is going to take from you, and you yourself are hired by that person, if something happens to the object, you will not be paid back. The borrower is exempt. So in a way, when he said that, the students were very smart. But let me just explain to you what Rava says. Rava says, Rava, Mikre, a teacher of children, somebody who teaches. Dardeki, a local gardener. Shatla, a person who a gardener. Tavcha, a butcher. The umana, and the bloodletter. Safar, Mata, the scribe of the city. All of these people, like a accountant or a notary. Kulon be'idan avidatayu kisheila beve'alim dabo. So it's interesting. So a person who works in the city, say for example, a person, municipal worker, comes on and wants to, works with some object that in your house that you are borrowing. The fact that if the item is broken, you do not have to pay anything because these people are employed by you, essentially. So the object that you borrow from them, any object you borrow from them, is considered to be that you are exempted from paying. Why? Because these people are municipal workers. You're a taxpayer. You are employing them. They're employing your service. They're serving you. So therefore, that's what it says, Kishila beve'alim damo. Any object from them that you break, you're exempted from paying because the be'alim, the owner of the object, is there with you. On that basis, that if you are employing somebody, you're employing them. If you break something of them while in your employment, you're exempt. Amru le Rabbanan le Rava, the student said to Rava, Sha'ilan mar. So
Rabbi, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
So the fact that you're exempt, can we conclude that it means that there wouldn't be any expectation for the borrower to go over and above, I guess, to make up their own equity and say, you know what, even though I'm technically exempt, I feel bad for you. I know you need that object to get on with your day tomorrow.
In this case, the students were very smart. They were saying to the Rabbi, since you are in our service, because you are my teacher, right? It says here, the teacher, the scribe of the city, is employed by the city, by the dwellers. So the students say, well, so then you're employed by us. So you're lent to us to teach us Torah. So if we borrow an item from you, we should be exempted from liability. You understand? We'll borrow a book from you and we break it, we do not have to pay back. So that's because Rava said, if you're employed somebody, if you're employing somebody and you break something that they have, borrow them and they break it, you do not have to pay. Rava was angry by his and said, no. You want to take my money away from me? Do you think that I'm employed by you? On the contrary, I am not lent to you. You're lent to me. Since you assist me in consolidating my Torah knowledge. The Torah, by the way, is other about she'iltuli. The reason is that when I teach, actually, I'm learning. So I am getting more scholarship. I'm just getting more scholarship because I'm teaching you. Right? This is also true of this class too. You're actually helping me learn more. And by discussing this with you, I am also learning. So in a way, you are helping me. I'm employing you to help me. That's what Rabbi was saying. You're helping me in consolidating the learning. How do I know that? What is the proof? I'm able to deflect from one tractor to another. In other words, I can teach you whatever I want. So if you're hiring me, I will be limited to teach you what you want, or only some things, because I am at your service. The fact that I can say, no, today we're going to learn this Masechet, tomorrow another Masechet, whatever I want, because it's about me, I'm using you to help me teach. So therefore, you're in my employment. I'm employing you. You're not employing me. You understand? The Gemara then says that is not true. Lohi. Rabbi was not right. During the days of the Kala. Kala was at certain times, usually before Rosh Hashanah and before Pesach, when rabbis were obligated to teach the community the laws of the holidays. And therefore, since they were obligated to teach, in a way, they were employed by the people. Just like the Torah scribe, like a municipal worker. A rabbi is not doing whatever he wants. He has to teach. He is employed to teach a curriculum. So he is employed. He is not the employer. He is the employee, right? Because he's obligated to teach a certain curriculum. So in that case, the Gemara says, the teacher is required to teach a specific subject. Therefore, he is lent to them. During the month of Kol Yarchei Kala, by the way, those were full months in which people did not work, and they went to seminars and learning for the whole month. A beautiful idea, Yarchei Kala. So during those times, the teachers were not doing whatever they wanted to do. They were not learning whatever they wanted. They were really employees working to teach the people those holidays. During the rest of the days of the year, however, Rabbi was right. The students are lent to him. He's using the students to consolidate his knowledge and to learn a little bit more. All right? So let's review. Rabbi was essentially here saying that if you are a municipal worker, when you have something to do for the person, you are lent to them. And your objects are lent to them as well. If they break one of your objects, as the Torah said, since you are with the object, the borrower is exempt from liability. The student, in a very smart way, thought, since the teacher is obligated to teach us, so then he is in our employment, we can then borrow something from the teacher, and if we break it, we do not have to pay back, because it's a perfect case in which the item and the owner are employed by the borrower. And therefore, the student said, maybe we can borrow something from you and we don't have to pay you back. Rabbi said, no, you're wrong. During the year, and that's what the Gemara concludes, the students are in the employ of the teacher. The teacher uses the students. He borrows them in order to be able to teach, to enlarge his knowledge, to become a better scholar. Okay, up to here, it's all clear?
I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah.
The teacher getting paid to give that class?
It depends upon your perspective.
Yeah, that's true. All right, so let's go back. So, according to this principle, we learn, and that's what the Gemara says, that during the year, the teacher is the borrower, the students are the objects being borrowed, and the objects that they come are borrowed. So if they break something, of course, if you break something of them, you do not You do not have to pay. It's all the way around. But let me just go back to the issue. Who has a right to make decisions? Is it the borrower? I'm sorry, is it the teacher or the student? And so here we see is the teacher and not the student. However, we're going to see an interesting case. Before we started this, I want to tell you where the question came from. And this question came from this rabbi, Rabbi Frumer. I want to point out a little bit who Rabbi Frumer was. Rabbi Aryeh Tzvi Frumer, born 1884, died 1943. I want to point out a little bit about him. Very interesting story. He was a rabbi in several towns in Poland and ended up being the Rosh Yeshiva. You remember the Yeshiva Chachmei Lublin, one of the most beautiful yeshivot in Poland. Unfortunately, it was inaugurated only a few years before the war. And in 1939, unfortunately, it had to be closed. Today was for a while a medical school. Now it's being returned to becoming a yeshiva again in Lublin, outside of Warsaw. During the German occupation of Poland, he was incarcerated in the Warsaw Ghetto. He was deported to the Majdanek concentration camp where he was murdered. The book that he wrote was Eretz Tzvi, because he visited Palestine in 1935 for a few months. Eretz Tzvi means the land of the deer, the land of Israel. Usually his responses were to queries from such Torah luminaries as the Gerer Rebbe, which we're going to be discussing today. He uses halakha, also Kabbalistic sources, to solve halachic problems. This is one of the things we are going to do today as well. Story, by the way, even when he was in the Warsaw Ghetto, he continued to teach in the ghetto. Also, he went afterwards to work as a factory outside of the ghetto, doing like wooden clogs and first slippers. And they say that as he was working, he was reviewing his Torah studies by heart. They say that he was taken to the gas chamber, and as he was entering the gas chamber, he clapped his hands and proclaimed, Nekadesh et Shimcha, let's sanctify God's name with joy. And he said, Shecheyanu v'kiimanu, to be able to reach this merit of offering our lives for the sake of Hashem. So this great rabbi, Rabbi Frumer, received a question from the Gerer Rebbe. Let me just point out quickly. This is the book. You can see in front of you, Eretz Tzvi. I want to show you the frontage of the book. Is the frontage page, 1938. You see here, Lublin, Sheilot u'Tshuvot, Responsa by Aryeh Tzvi Frumer. Okay. So now you can see what was the question of this rabbi. In Avodah Zarah, in the Tractate of Avodah Zarah, 19a, it says as follows. I'm not reading it in English to make it easier. It says in Psalms, the first book of Psalms, in the first chapter of Psalms, his delight is in the Torah of the Lord. So Rabbi Yehuda Nasi says, because it says delight, that means that a person, when he studies Torah, should have pleasure. Therefore, a person can only learn Torah for a place that his heart desires. If you are learning something you want to learn, you're going to appreciate it more, you're going to remember it more. As it says, his delight is in the Torah of the Lord. His delight is in the part of the Torah that he wishes to study. Okay? So that means that the student has a right to determine what he's going to study. The Gemara relates, there were Levi and Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, sitting before Rabbi Yehuda Nasi. And they were learning Torah. When they finished the book, they were learning, they were ready to learn a new subject. Levi said, I want to read the book of Proverbs, Mishle. Rabbi Shimon, the son of Rabbi Yehuda Nasi, said, no, I want to bring the book of Psalms. And of course, Rabbi Yehuda Nasi had to teach either Psalms or Proverbs. So he compelled Levi to acquiesce. We wanted to study Proverbs. He said, okay, well, please accept that we're going to study Tehillim. So they brought the book of Tehillim. When they arrived there, at the very verse in the first chapter that says, "It's the light is the Torah of the Lord," Rabbi Yehuda Nasi explained it, says, a person can learn Torah only from a place in the Torah that his heart desires. Oh, Levi said, my teacher, you given me permission to rise and leave because I want to study Proverbs, not Psalms. And he left. That's the story. All right. So you see here that a student decides when he wants to learn. So this contradicts the story of Baba Metzia. Baba Metzia will learn the opposite. Metzia will learn that a person can only learn what the teacher tells him. And this is what I want to show you. Rabbi Eretz Tzvi brings a question from the Imre Emet. It's true Baba Metzia that of course the rabbi, the primary position selecting the subject to teach, contradicts the sugi in Avodah Zarah that gives the right to the student. Thus, it is the teacher who is being borrowed, subjugated to the student, whereas in Baba Metzia, in Baba Metzia, it is the students who are being borrowed to the teacher. Okay. So this is the question that we have now. We have two contradictory versions. One of them says that the teacher can decide. In a sense, the students are clerking for him. And therefore, the students are there to help him amass and develop information, knowledge. The Avodah Zarah says that the student can learn whatever he wants, not the teacher. And if the teacher doesn't want to teach you what you want to learn, you can go get another teacher. Now we have therefore a problem. How do we resolve the contradiction between these two sources? Now, before we proceed, as we do all the time in this class, I want to give a little bit of time for people who would like to analyze this conflict and give me an answer. Again, I want to just repeat the question again. In Baba Metzia, it says clearly, the rest of the days, the students are lent to the teacher. So the teacher can teach whatever subject matter he wishes. He's the boss. And Avodah Zarah says, a student can learn only from a place that he desires. He makes the choice. And if Levi says, if you don't teach me that, I'm going away. That means that the student has to decide. The teacher has to do what the student wants to do. How do you resolve these two questions? Okay, just stop for a moment. Let me know if somebody wants to. Of Avodah Zarah, we're discussing only a case where they were lower level students, when therefore they were subject to some curriculum. You know, it's an interesting answer, but it doesn't seem in this case that there's a big difference between Mishlei and Psalms. And the fact that he got up and said, I'm leaving, shows in some way that he wasn't subject to the curriculum. Or maybe he could do the curriculum later. You know, maybe you have to study books, but you do not necessarily have to study the order the teacher wants. Go ahead.
Rabbi.
Yeah.
So in the book of Vayikra,
that's the question.
Yes, that's a secondary issue, Rabbi.
According to the Baba Metzia, the student does not have a right. In the Avodah Zarah, he has a right to choose whatever he wants.
The reason he's leaving is
That is, you're also, I think that Roger started a similar concept. And I think that maybe you're making an important distinction. I understand. In the case of Rabbi, he had total carte blanche. In the case of the Avodah Zarah case with Rebbe, he was simply selecting one of the two. But nevertheless, it still makes the rabbi the ability to make the decision. He's the one decided to do this, not to do that, even though he couldn't do both, but he decides. So the issue is the rabbi ultimately the final authority, or is the student the final authority? And I think that what we can say, and I make a suggestion, is that the rabbi is the final authority. The problem is the student has a right to try to persuade the teacher to teach him whatever he wants. And if he fails to persuade the teacher, then he has to go another teacher. But the teacher is ultimately the final authority. So in both cases, there's no contradiction. In the case of Levi, he was simply saying, Rebbe, I want to learn this because I want to be delighted. But he could not force the teacher to teach him that. And therefore the teacher is ultimately, just like Rava, the ultimate authority. I want to end to this is one of the possible answers. If you look a little bit, I want to show you for a moment the book of the Eretz HaTzvi, and here notice that whoever wrote this made a lot of notes on this on the side. You see, and this concept. There were the answer of the Eretz HaTzvi is not satisfying. You know, he is also suggesting that maybe the teacher had the right to learn whatever he wanted because he was afraid that otherwise he was going to forget it, and therefore that's why he has the right. Whereas in the other case, it wasn't a matter of forgetting; it was a matter of a choice, and therefore that's what he would give the student the right, even the Avodah Zarah. But I think that the contradiction can be resolved simply by saying that in both cases, the rabbi has the ultimate authority, even though the student can actually try, if possible, to persuade the teacher to do something else.
I'm sorry, Rabbi.
Yeah.
But the student, they cannot learn whatever they want to learn.
The text of that we are studying. This is a very important text. We learn that, let's take a look at the words. When the owner was with the object, no restitution needs to be made. There was a rabbi who actually says, this is a very, very difficult law. The rabbi says, Tamati kol yamai. I was surprised at this law. Why? Just because the owner of the object is hired by the borrower, why should this exempt the borrower from liability? After all, he broke it. He actually was negligent. Why should he be exempt? So the answer is, that's the law of the Torah. Rambam, as I said, explained that actually Rambam goes into this law in the Gadol Perplex, in the Moreh Nevuchim. Of all the laws, he analyzes this law because it's a difficult law to explain. But you think about it. Why should it be exempt? Just because he's there? He didn't break it. In fact, the borrower is exempted even if he's not there. So long as he's his employee, the borrower is exempt from liability completely. Why should this be so? So this rabbi, Chabad Yair, one of the other rabbis, asked the question. This is very difficult to understand, very difficult to understand. So the Rambam explains, as I said, that since he is, the word imo means that the borrower, the owner of the object is with the object. Imo means not with the borrower, but it's actually with the object. So next to the object. So he never let it go of the object. He's the owner, but he is managing the object. He's almost like moving the object. Do you understand? In other words, the borrower is only borrowing the service of the item with the borrower of the item of the with the person himself. However, there is a rabbi that I want to introduce to you who says, in reality, this law is actually a hidden, mysterious law that is applicable to something else. It's not applicable to only monetary matters. It's applicable to a different kind of a borrowing. And as the borrowing is the soul, remember that thing that Roger had raised a little bit this question. The soul that God gave us, He lent us the soul. Let's go, before we continue for a moment, I want to just give you this beautiful biography of the rabbi called Rabbi Emanuel of Fano, or Emanuel da Fano, from the city of Fano in Italy. 1548 to 1620, he was an Italian rabbi. He was actually a disciple of Rabbi Moshe Cordovero, the Tomer Dvorah, the palm tree of Dvorah. He was widows. He offered a lot of money for her husband's manuscripts. He actually supported. He was apparently a wealthy man. He had a very important students. When Rabbi Caro, before his death, sent the Kesef Mishneh, his commentary on Maimonides, Yad Chazakah, to Manto for publication. Fano, at the suggestion of De Rosi, assumed part of the expense. Interesting, he helped Yosef Caro in the publication of Kesef Mishneh, which is the commentary on the Maimonides Mishneh Torah. He actually is interesting that Yedida Rekanati translated the book by the Rambam Moreh Nevuchim in Italian, Erudizioni dei Confusi, and he sent it to Fano as a dedicated, an important man. Rabbi Yeshaya Horowitz, the Shla Kodesh, the Shnei Luchot HaBrit, also considered his book Yonat Elem a very important book. Comes very near the truth, means it's Kabbalistic truth. It's interesting, one of the points that he makes, I want to show you this, which is very beautiful. He talks about how the Torah, when putting prohibitions, there are two kinds of laws of the Torah, right? The prohibitions and the positive commandments. So the prohibitions of the Torah never appear the imperative. Do this, don't do that, don't do that. But in the form of the future, thou shalt not have other gods. Thou shalt not bow down to other gods. Thou shalt not wear falsehood. In other words, this means, I know that you will not be guilty of these things, since human nature does not tolerate such crimes. So if sin occurs in this life, it can only be a passing episode. On the other hand, the commandments that are positive and the imperative, kabed, honor your father, zachor, remember Shabbat. That is, I'm not commanding anything new. The good instincts in you have always been there. They only need to be awakened and developed. A beautiful idea of his pessimistic view of how life should be treated. And so I want to point out a beautiful explanation that the Rabbi Emanuel of Pana suggests. He says that a mitzvah, if you do a mitzvah with a good intention, is as if you are actually having God, the mitzvah of God. God gave you the mitzvah, lent you the mitzvah. And if you had a good intention, it's as if you're bringing God together with a mitzvah. If you intend to do a mitzvah with a good intention, to do the right thing, for no other reason than to obey what God wants, and then you don't manage to do the mitzvah well, you do not have to pay back. You don't have to do it again, because your intention was good. Your God was with you. The honor of the mitzvah was with you. If, on the other hand, you start doing a mitzvah, and you don't know, not for the right intentions, you're not paying attention, you're just doing mechanically. Even if you're doing it without it, and if you do something wrong with the mitzvah, that mitzvah is not counted. If you any error in the mitzvah, you'll be accounted. It's as if God was not with you. The honor was not with you. So he explains it in a very metaphoric way, that the way when God is with you, then you can actually assume that if you make an error, that you do not have to pay back for it. God will forgive you. And I want to give you one more beautiful explanation that he gives. He says that the world, Hashem gives you the world. It lends you the world. So if, when you're using the world, if you make a mistake in the world, you make a sin, so long as you have God with you, then even if you make an error, you do not have to pay back. But if you use the world and God is not with you, you're not seeing God in the world, and you misuse the world, then you have to pay back. You'll be punished. Let me repeat this. God is lending you the world. If you bring God with you, and then in the world, by some mistake, you make a mistake, you damage something in the world, you do something wrong, God, you don't have to pay back.
So, Rabbi, I just had a beautiful thought.
Wait a second. But if you do not have that, any error that you have, you'll be liable. Yeah. Yes.
I don't know if there's a connection. It just sparked something.
I'll review this in a moment, Roger. It's a very good idea. I want to develop it just one moment with you, but I want to finish this idea. Rav Kook develops this concept in a very special way, and I want you to pay attention to this because it's one of the most revolutionary thoughts that I've seen about this matter. He says that there are two ways in which we use the world, or the world connect with us. Some things Hashem manages himself. World item, matters, the world affairs, the global issues of the world. We cannot control them. And those things that God manages, he may use us as instruments to achieve his goal, but he's the one who does it. So seeing he is doing it, then anything, if using us as agents of his action, even if we make a mistake, it's forgiven. And the way he puts it is, Rav Kook says, in the development of the state of Israel, for example, the return of the Jewish people to the land of Israel was an illogical act. It's not something that people could have thought themselves. It's obviously the hand of God that ran everything. So in that level, where God is actually the actor in this action, he is the one who guides everything. He is the owner of the object. We are the object in a way. If we make a mistake, if we damage something, even the formation of the state of Israel, people who are not religious are going to be doing terrible things. They're forgiven because God is the one is present in that act. But when it comes to individual acts of our own doing in our own lives, and we use the world when we do something wrong, we are liable because then God is not with us. And the reason God is not with us is that God is not managing. In our private life, God doesn't manage our lives. We make decisions. God is not with us. Therefore, we are responsible for our errors. But when we are acting in a way that is in the plans that Hashem is managing, not us, even though we are the ones who are doing something about it, we established the state of Israel. But it is Hashem who is managing. He is with us. We are not liable for any errors that we could have. But I want to just end with the idea that you had. I like the idea that if I am with somebody and he borrows something from me, in a way, I am equally responsible for himself. And that's, in a sense, it's a very good definition of my brother's keeper. I like that very much, Roger. Beautiful. We, in a way, become codependent when we actually are together. And we become responsible for one another. All right, we're going to end the class here now. But I'm inviting you to any comment or suggestions that you want to make here.